What if I told you that the best dress watches are not the ones that are being made today, with most of them being way too thick and lacking sophistication? However, dress watches didn't used to be this way. They used to be super thin, elegant, and most importantly, timeless. However, the vintage market can be an absolute minefield, trust me, I know. It's hard to know what to look for and where to look for it. Fear not though, I have you covered. Today I'll take you through 10 hidden gem dress watches that you need to see, and I can guarantee that you'll want at least one of these watches for your collection. Hello there, my name is Kieran, welcome to Top Tier Ticker, I hope you're having a good day. No matter your budget, I have something for you in this video, and I've saved the best 3 suggestions till last, so stick around to see those picks. And if you want to see more top 10s like this in the future, then the best thing to do is hit that subscribe button. So if you're looking for an Art Deco style dress watch, but you don't fancy a crusty 99-year-old watch that's got more sweat on it than a gym towel, I've found the perfect solution. This watch looks extremely old, but it actually dates from the 1990s. It almost slides into the Art Deco era like it's travelled back in time with Doctor Who. It has a beautiful 2-tone sector dial, delicate leaf hands, a high polished case with chamfered edges, and tiny lugs which all make for an extremely elegant rectangular dress watch. This model is the Tissot Heritage Z173. These little quartz watches fly under most people's radars, so you can pick them up for as little as $100, which is ridiculous. The small dimensions are true to its vintage origins, though the 19mm lug width is admittedly a bit of a pain. It also features the old school Tissot logo, which I think we can all agree looks miles better than the modern one. And the neo-vintage goodness doesn't end there. If that one doesn't tickle your fancy, Tissot released a whole range of vintage-inspired heritage models in the 1990s, like the hand-wound mechanical Lisboa Z150 with hinged lugs, the quartz banana Z181 with its curved and elongated rectangular case, the hand-wound Navigator World Timer Z197, and my favourite, the dashing Janeiro Z199 chronograph containing the manual wind Valjoux 7795 movement. Tissot has such an amazing history, and these watches are only scratching the surface. Now, if you thought that fashion brands only make rubbish watches, well, you'd mostly be right, but not this time. Some of you might think that I am losing my mind featuring this next watch on the Top Tier Ticker channel, but seriously, just hear me out. This is the Gucci 545M, and it dates from the 1990s, and it's a style of watch that is known as a disco volante, which is Italian for flying saucer. The hidden lugs and large round bezel makes the watch look like it's hovering over the wrist, hence the name. The lack of visible lugs draws the eyes to the Roman numerals and sunken guilloche dial. It's only 33.5mm in diameter and extremely thin, and for me it oozes elegance and Italian style. But watches without lugs tend to have a more impactful visual experience and wear larger than the dimensions suggest. You can find watches in this style with much more elaborate decoration from high-end Swiss brands like Audemars Piguet and Vacheron Constantin, but obviously at a much steeper price point. This watch comes in at around $300, which I know is going to be hard for some to stomach given the brand name that's on the dial, but it is Swiss made, so you at least know that the quality is there. There is also a 546M variant, which is the same watch but with a beads of rice style bracelet. It's hard to believe that a brand best known for loafers and flamboyant fashion designs could produce a watch this elegant, but here we are. And if you think that I'm mad for including a Gucci watch on this list, then please drop the video a like rating, thank you. This next watch is truly out of this world. Before quartz watches took over the watch world in the 1970s, there were electric watches like the Bulova Accutron Spaceview, which used tuning fork technology to produce movements that were much more accurate than the mechanical watches of the time. These movements make an unmistakable humming sound rather than the familiar ticking sound of a quartz or mechanical movement. Now, these watches were originally intended to be sold with regular looking dials, not with the exposed movements that have since made the Spaceview famous. Story goes that the watches with exposed movements were sent to dealers to showcase the new technology to potential buyers, but they proved to be so popular that the dealers started selling them directly to the customer, and then they started converting regular watches by removing the dials and replacing the crystals with ones with printed markers. It was so successful that Bulova designed models with a visible movement, and these are the watches that come with the chapter ring beneath the dial. You do have to be careful when buying one of these though, because some of them are Franken watches with just random parts jumbled together, or they're sold with unreliable, unserviced movements which you can't just take to any old watchmaker to repair. But if you can find an original one in great condition, it's a real winner. Some may raise an eyebrow as to why this watch has been included on a dress watch list, but these Spaceviews were petite in size, so they actually wore rather elegantly. Not a traditional dress watch by any means, but a conversation starter for sure. Now, the more experienced collectors watching this video won't be surprised to see Universal Genève feature on this video. However, most will expect the pole router to be the pick, but it isn't. Instead, my recommendation is the Universal Genève White Shadow. These ovular watches are incredibly thin and elegant thanks to the micro-rotor mechanical movements contained within. The micro-rotor fitted within the movement itself allowed Universal Genève to produce a watch that was only 7mm thick, while still being powered by motion. Even by today's standards, the movements that are inside of these white shadows are bloody brilliant. A simple case and dial, two-hand design paired with a high-quality leather strap is the dress watch in its purest form. The quality is on par with high-end brands like Patek, but at a much more affordable price. Some may recognize this style from Patek Philippe, with them producing a watch called the Ellipse, which looks incredibly similar. But the original was actually the Universal Genève. Yes, even Patek Philippe themselves copy a design when it looks this bloody good. And for those of you who want a slice of Gerald Genta in your collection, the White Shadow has plenty of genuine Genta DNA, with him designing the early White Shadow models. Now the cat is kind of already out of the bag with these watches, so you can't pick them up for as cheap as some of the other watches we're featuring today, but they still cost considerably less than your average Cartier, whilst being packed with horological charm and maintaining the sophisticated looks. Now this next watch might just make you jump out of your seat. This quartz watch has one of the coolest and rarest types of watch movement, a jump hour with a retrograde minutes complication. It's the Jean d'Yves Sectora. A jump hour movement is special because the hour hand doesn't slowly move around the dial like a traditional watch, but instead jumps to the next hour every 60 minutes, hence the jump hour name. And this watch is even more special because it also has a retrograde minute hand, meaning that the minute hand will jump back to the 0 position after 60 minutes rather than continuously circling around the dial. Now if this movement wasn't cool enough, it's also paired with one of the most unusual case and dial designs that you're ever likely to see. But it's also designed in a way where time can be read whilst the bulk of the watch is still under the shirt cuff. You can find them on leather straps or beads of rice style bracelet. It is gold plated though, so it may be hard to find one in really nice condition. And of course you can't just drop in a new cheap quartz movement if this movement does die on you. So make sure the movement is running well before you buy. This is definitely one of the more acquired taste watches that feature on this video, but unquestionably something that's deep cut and for the guy or gal who wants to stand out. If like me, you struggle to get up in the morning, this next choice might just help you with that. To the untrained eye, this beautiful watch might look like a chronograph or perhaps a GMT watch. But if you made that assumption, you'd be wrong. So what is the extra pusher and the fourth hand on the dial for? The clue is in the name. This is the Vulcain Cricket. This watch features a mechanical alarm complication. This is down to a tiny hammer and pin within the caliber 120 manual wind movement, which produces a distinct cricket-like sound when the alarm is activated. The caseback was designed to be like sort of an echo chamber, which made the alarm louder than previous attempts to produce a watch in this style by other watch brands. Introduced to the market in 1947, the Cricket was a stunning success and most famously worn by Texas Senator Lyndon B. Johnson, who later went on to become President of the United States. Now Vulcain was founded way back in 1858, but they disappeared almost completely because of the quartz crisis like a lot of Swiss brands. The brand has changed hands many times over the years, but has recently seen the most success. It was bought by the same person who owns Nevada Gentian and Excelsior Park, and they now sell modern versions of the Cricket. So if you want the reliability of a modern watch, you could pick up a new one for about $4,000. But go vintage and you can find them for under 1,000. This is one of those funny occasions where the vintage option destroys the modern in terms of value for money, and I actually think it destroys it in character too. If you're looking for a quirky dress watch that has a beautiful stone dial but don't have deep pockets, don't worry, I've got you covered. Look no further than the Esco Saint Mortis. This is a watch brand that has existed for over 100 years, but isn't that well known in the mainstream, which is a good thing when you're hunting for a vintage watch. It also gives you the feeling of owning a hidden gem, you know? These petite 1980s dress watches came in a number of different case shapes, with round and tonneau variants available, with a seemingly endless variety of colourful gemstone dials. The best bit is that because these dials are made from natural stone, no two dials look exactly alike. Each dial has slight imperfections and colour variants, making them truly unique from one another. You can find them in coral, granite, jade, lapis, aventurine, tiger's eye, and even this absolutely mind-blowing beautiful opal. Now these watches will set you back about $1,000 plus, which isn't cheap, but much more affordable than brands like Piaget, where you'll pay multiple times that for a similar watch. And this watch is from the era where making watches thin was actually a priority. Yes, these do feature mechanical movements, but they're still super thin at just 6mm, which is how thick a dress watch should be. I'm looking at you, Orient, 14mm, horrendous, sort it out. Now the modern market isn't exactly bursting with these watches ready to buy, so this is a watch that you'll have to be patient with and stay on the hunt. But if you do find one, you've got one hell of a watch here. Now if you're desperate to own a Cartier but you don't have thousands of dollars to spend, do not despair, I've got a good solution for you. This collection of watches was first introduced in 1977 as affordable alternatives to Cartier's expensive solid gold options. The cases are made from 925 sterling silver and gold plated to give them a luxurious look, whilst keeping costs lower. There seem to be a bazillion different dial variants out there, from traditional tank style with Roman numerals, sector dials, funky enamel dials, and everything in between, so you should be able to find something that suits your taste. The early ones were mechanical, but later ones featured simpler quartz movements. Now, the Cartier hype train has been very strong over the last couple of years, so the prices on these have been rising, but you can still find well-worn examples for around $1,000, rising to double that or even more if you want one in really nice condition. I personally think these old school Cartiers have way more character to them than the modern stuff, with Cartier then experimenting a lot more with dials than they seemingly do today. So I'd personally go for one of the more unusual dial designs here. These are on the smaller side compared with most watches on today's video, but let's be honest, that's kind of expected with a Cartier. That's why they look so classy. And if you want a watch where your money is going to be safe, I think this is a very good place to put it. Cartier does and probably always will have a very strong price on the secondary market. When most think of the Longines Conquest, they likely think of tough and versatile everyday watches, which is and has always been the aim with that model, even back when it was first introduced. The Conquest line was launched in 1954 as Longines' first product family, introduced around the same time as the Rolex Explorer in fact. These watches were designed for rough and tough adventurers, but they are small and elegant by modern standards with a case size of 35mm, which was extremely common for the time even though it isn't these days. The original line of Conquests were manufactured until around 1959 when the designs were updated. The most affordable Conquests are made from stainless steel and cost just a few $100s, rising to many thousands with solid gold examples on matching genuine gold bracelets. The Conquest also shares similarities with the Omega Constellation, featuring the insanely cool enamel motifs on the back of the watch case. There's tons of different dial designs and there's definitely something for everybody's budget here. Longines occasionally reissues old Conquest models for its heritage line, but often upsizes them for the modern watch market, meaning vintage Conquest models remain unrivaled. The Conquest line is still around but has turned into a family of stainless steel sports watches, which was the intention with the original Conquest. It just shows how time has shifted in terms of style. And they're nice in their own right, no doubt, but a far cry from the stunning references from the early 1950s. They say save the best to last, and here we are. It's the aforementioned Omega Constellation. First introduced in 1952, the Constellation series is probably the most famous for its distinctive pie pan dials, with star motif and constellation branding, another design that was thought up by the legendary Gerald Gentner. As mentioned previously, the casebacks featured stunning enamel motifs and depicted the Omega Observatory, though these will often be faded or worn unless you're lucky enough to find a like-new example. Early models contained automatic calibers, with so-called bumper rotors which spun back and forth, but they were replaced within a few years with new variants containing 360-degree automatic rotors. The series evolved through the decades to reflect the changing watch industry, with flat dials and later integrated bracelets introduced in the 1960s. Then we got quartz movements in the 1970s, before transforming into a full-on sports watch line in the 1980s, and then beyond with the Omega Constellation Manhattan. The Constellation lives on to this day as the pie pan dialed Globemaster and the modern iterations of the Manhattan. Like the Cartier earlier, prices amongst the Constellation lineup vary tremendously. It really does depend on which era of Constellation you go for. Pie pans tend to be the most expensive, with the tamer designs being a lot more affordable, but don't neglect some of the integrated bracelet quartz models too, which can often be found for way under $1,000. The Constellation model is so fast with variants, you'll undoubtedly find one that suits your style and budget. But if you've somehow still not found your next watch in this video, then here's 25 more suggestions for you. 25! You'll definitely find something there you like. Go and check it out, I'll see you over there. Bye for now, guys.